are we tapping into the audience that has stayed with you, that has experienced your service? And one of my colleagues has a famous phrase: if a tree falls in the forest, is anybody going to know about it?
Mm-hmm.
So we can pull levers all day long as a revenue manager, but wizard behind the curtain. And if we don't tell the audience that we're making changes and highlighting things to them, then we're not going to see that occupancy or the conversion rates that we want to see.
Welcome to RevLabs by PriceLabs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the RevLabs podcast, the podcast for revenue managers, vacation rental managers, provided by PriceLabs. Today, I'm with Sharon Keefe, and she's the founder of VRM Advocate, and we'll be talking about her long, good, great experience in vacation rentals and how that can help you increase your revenues. A lot of topics today, from adapting to market changes, optimizing your listings, but these are of course topic we hear about a lot, but coming from somebody who's done it and who's advising people who do it every day. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of value for you. Without further ado, let's welcome Sharon. Sharon, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm very excited for the conversation, and yes, let's go ahead and get started.
Exactly. As I was saying that you these are very great topics, and the good thing with you is that you've done this, right? You've been through that, I would say. So for people who may want to understand a bit more about how you started in the industry, and then what led you to create this company, can you give us some cliff notes about that?
Absolutely. So I started the adventure into the vacation rental management industry in 2005. And, that is sounding archaic when we look at even just one of the common OTAs, Airbnb, right? And how many years that was before Airbnb ever even existed. So a lot of my day-to-day in the trenches looked a lot different in some ways. And in others, it is identical to the day-to-day and what we like to say is the controlled chaos of what short-term rental operators and vacation rental managers are living a day in the life. And so I'm very passionate about helping teams create work-life balance and not repeat some of the same mistakes that I made back then of, letting some of the other noise and chaos kind of control how you make decisions. We didn't have data back then. There's a lot of interesting trends that are still consistent, but we were kind of blind to it. And we were lucky to have that 5-star review without even the intentionality of now what's kind of required to chase after that and manage the business with data-driven decisions. So everyone, fast forward, VRM Advocate was created in 2018 with that passion of really just allowing teams to fast track their success. And everyone on my team, super blessed to work with a fabulous team. There's 7 of us, and we've all been in the vacation rental management industry in the capacity that we're working with today. So revenue management, marketing, SEO, owner relations, just all of it. So there's a lot that we dive in and run alongside teams across the US.
And Sharon, when I hear this, I'm thinking about the clients that you, I guess, coach or you give, things for. What is, I think, one of the most common question that people have on their mind when they turn to you, to VM advocates? What's on their mind? What do they turn to you? Is there any kind of like common question people have or need, or that's like, yes, I need to go and see Sharon for that?
Great question. So since we dive into so many aspects of a vacation rental management operation, it can get kind of confusing on the onset. It really depends on what their challenge or pain point is. So it's a variety. If it's trust accounting, they're like, I don't understand, my software, or we've never had a budget. I guess in a nutshell, the questions that we see are really evident that our industry, the barrier to entry is so low that you don't need a business plan you literally need a property, and now you don't even need a website. You don't need a PMS system. You just need an OTA, a cleaner, and a logo, and you can say, I'm open for business, right? And so we work with teams that are brand new into the industry, and then we work with veterans that are 30 years into the industry that they're like, we didn't have a business plan, right? And so help us back up. We've never had a forecast. We've never had a budget. We've never had an organization chart or what we use as an accountability chart of defined roles. So they'll come to us frantic about a challenge on their plate. We don't know how to price our properties, but as the conversation unfolds, we know there's underlying issues that have to do with the lack of a business plan, the lack of profit margins, right? So ultimately, we'll address their first pain point that they're really frantic about, and that they either have a homeowner or a team member or a guest that's really upset with them. And we'll work through that. And then we just organically start to work on a wider variety of items that we want to give them like long-term success, not just like the quick answer for their kind of dire need in the moment.
I really love that, and it reminds me of my seeing my therapist for something like this and uncovering there's something bigger underneath, right? Which is, I'm half joking here, but I really love what you said here, right? It's the business plan, the nature of the industry, the fact that at some point you have to be a Swiss knife and know how to do everything, and then you hire a team and they have to sort of go through this, and this it's really fantastic. And so let's talk about now some of the challenges or recommendations. Challenges people have, recommendations for that you may have. And we, again, I want to mention that Sorab here, who prepared this episode with you. And so if I understand correctly, you can help people face big changes in markets, right? And for example, I can imagine that building on your own experience. I was reading that you turned around a vacation rental management company, right? Made it profitable. Things like this. Can you share example of like unexpected factors, maybe when you're doing this or with your clients, these unexpected factors that can impact vacation rental portfolios, and how managers can adapt to these challenges so they really want to maintain the profits that you just mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Well, in a nutshell, I think it comes down to having the right properties in your portfolio. And, I was in a world that, we not only didn't have the data, but also it was kind of driven by the real estate market and the surplus of properties that really, in order to purchase this investment property, I need to be able to rent it out. Not, is this a property that's desirable for a family of 5 to come up from, Chicago and come to the lake? It was so kind of putting that into play of, should this property even be on our program in our portfolio? Can we even perform? And then fast forwarding that today, we still see a quality over quantity mix, and people will come to us, frantic and just saying, we need more occupancy and revenue. We need more nights and we need higher rates. And we're like, okay, but let's back this up. And what other outliers contribute to the single revenue of every single property? And that's where we see, from a revenue management, just to kind of like dive into that ultimate subject of dynamic pricing and revenue management. We have a lot of phone calls coming in and email inquiries and conversations at conferences with people saying, I've been doing dynamic pricing for 2 years now or 5 years now. It's not working. Like, why am I not seeing the revenue lift? And it begs the question of what's going on with your reservation sales team and your marketing arm, because revenue management isn't a silo function, right? And so that is kind of, fast forward to where we are today in the trends. We can't use the technology to hopefully pick up on when rates should increase or decrease or length of stay should change. But we're really seeing people neglect all the levers that they can pull in revenue management. And that's where we really are inundated with those conversations in the last 6 months.
I got 2 follow-up questions there listening to you. I want to know about the outliers and I want to know about these levers. But first, when you mention some outliers, can you give me like 2 or 3 examples of what these outliers could be?
So OTA optimization, which is optimizing your listings strategically, not just kind of going through the mindless edits of changing the headlines, 1 month and then altering the photos another month, but strategically optimizing your listings according to your revenue manager and what they are trying to push and accelerate struggling properties, or what part of the calendar is behind pace, right? So that's one, optimizing your OTA listings. And then the other one, there's 2 more. Reservation sales on those inquiries and how we're handling those coming in. And then marketing. Are we tapping into the audience that has stayed with you, that has experienced your service? And one of my colleagues has a famous phrase: if a tree falls in the forest, is anybody going to know about it? So we can pull levers all day long as a revenue manager, but wizard behind the curtain. And if we don't tell the audience that we're making changes and highlighting things to them, then we're not going to see that occupancy or the conversion rates that we want to see.
I guess some of your clients as well, they may have these levers or these things in mind of what they should be doing, but they may feel, you know what, I'm somewhat small compared with large operators. And is there some kind of like levers or ways you do that, you see do things you see them do to be able to compete with these larger ones? What can help them stand out and or get more revenues, for example, more bookings?
Well, I think the engagement with their guests and their homeowners, right? I like to say that, the boutique model, the less than 100 properties or the less than 50 properties, you might feel that you don't have all the resources, right? But your engagement and intentionality, targeted message, targeted audience, right? And the guest and the homeowner, they do want that local expertise. So I think it's all about the processes that you put in place that allow your team to engage with the guest, right? And they're kind of catching on to some of the AI or automation. They want to know that it's a real person. So some of the follow-up that can be done during their stay that's getting ahead for them to rebook, right? Some teams are kind of afraid to ask guests while they're there, like, how is everything going? Is there anything else? Like, it's just going to cause more work for them, but actually getting ahead of it and putting some of these intentional communication points into the reservation or past, after they check out. These are the things that we're seeing that really are 101, but these are the things that we're seeing are really impacting the revenue lift at the end of the day, is how they're engaging with their guests.
And if we stay on this engagement and targeting, so if you think about really email campaigns and targeted messages, so what have you seen, or what kind of things you've seen work? Again, we're just talking about that. Is there any more that you think people are not doing, they should be doing, again, on the marketing side, emails, targeting messages, that can help them again increase revenues?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, we see a lot of people not engaging with their past audience. And really it starts with, once again, that revenue manager is that kind of at the helm of controlling what should the message be. Like, once again, if we're behind pace for spring break, right? And if we're a family destination, let's tap into guests that have stayed with us in the past for spring break and segment that database. And then also, let's talk about the things that are experience-based. So don't flood them with, 20 featured listings. We also see a lot of poorly designed from a content and a layout standpoint, e-blasts, that they'll have 20 featured listings, right? Or they're sending 4 a month and it's always properties only. Like, you want to grasp their attention with the experience, right? And then also keeping in touch with them on a consistent basis and letting them know what's going on in your destination. So it's just, once again, top of mind. So you don't always have to be having a call to action of like, book now, book now. Just putting your destination back in front of them. They're remembering their memories made, right? We're really fortunate to be able to be marketing vacations to people.
I know. You have them create lifelong memories. You just have to say, hey, remember that? You can help you recreate this, right? Same destination, maybe another house, right? But you still same destination. I know that your company, VRM Advocate, also helps with, being an OTAs, right? You talked about earlier how important it is to optimize somebody's presence on OTA, and how some companies nowadays, well, they just like, if I'm going to say that, but just like they start on Airbnb, they stick to Airbnb, with Airbnb and have no PMS and just do this. Maybe that's a bit extreme in terms of depending on somebody else's, building your own castle on somebody else's stuff. But what are tactics or things you've seen work for OTA optimization?
So we see a lot of success in catering the listing to, whether, like, let's say it's an event and we know people are doing searches, like we'll look at booking window to know what people are mostly searching for, like what dates, right? And then catering, like if there is an event that they would be coming into town, we're going to change that headline. If there's an amenity that is really in high demand in that market and you can barely find that amenity, right? So we're going to either reorder the photos, we're going to make sure that that amenity is listed not only in the list of amenities, right, but really bold in the description. So kind of depends on what we're targeting. If it's a ski in, ski out destination, and we're not targeting summer, we are going to talk about the hot tub, right? But if we're not targeting that season, so it's very specific, once again, starting with the revenue manager, what properties are struggling, what part of the calendar is struggling, and then let's go to the OTAs for that. And I don't know the last time that you searched for a vacation or a property, it didn't matter what the type of stay was on Airbnb. But even when you filter and like, okay, let me, there's 800 listings. And like, oh, I'm going to do Superhost only. I'm going to do, like 5 more filters.
Great. Yeah.
Get it down to like 500. And I'm like, it is so, you have to have patience. And some of the listings that have 85 pictures and you have to scroll through 25 just to get inside. So there, it's very exhausting, for lack of a better word, to search on Airbnb for a property in a stay that you're looking for. And so some of those keywords truly are like catching the audience's attention, and the algorithm of course, Airbnb too.
That's something I can really relate to with my 3 properties, but something I would like to do, and I can do this manually. When you have clients that have dozens, hundreds of listings, what are good ways for them to do this kind of work at scale? Is there a ways to do this? You talked already about prioritization. You talked about how first I look at struggling listings, and then I go into the OTAs to fix them first. Is there any kind of method of tool people can use to really say, okay, I can automate this a bit and save time doing the right thing?
That's a great question. And I'm wishing I had one of my colleagues that does most all of our training. We do a ton of training on OTA optimization. That's another thing that is at the core of VRM Advocate that we would love to teach and train. And then lo and behold, sometimes they're like, can you just do this for us? And that's an option too. But we really do like to train others on how to do this. And really, it's the methodology is kind of to put your properties on rotation. If there isn't, like, outside of the revenue manager saying, hey, this week we really need to emphasize and highlight and try to get these listings to show up on, page 1 on a search result. Outside of that, there's just a continuous rotation, right? And so just the glorious spreadsheet of what are the 5, what are the 10. Some companies that they have 300 properties, they are segmenting it and saying, okay, let's try to do 75 this week. And there's multiple team members and it's an interactive spreadsheet, and they're just literally plugging away at what was changed, what was the headlines. They have their links to the listings because it's VRBO, booking.com. It's not just Airbnb, right? So there's a lot of layers to the spreadsheet, but it's manageable when you can just say, here's the amount that we need to touch every week. And then by the end of the month, every single listing has been touched.
And we talked about, marketing optimization, and I'm pretty sure there's other things your company does. I'm sure there's some kind of revenue management as well, probably, right? And because I really like how we talked about, in a way, we obviously didn't dance around revenue management, which is of course a topic we love at PriceLabs. How it's always fascinating also listening to you, how we see things, how intertwined they are, right? It's like I look at my revenue management data to then talk about distribution, optimization, and back and forth. So, and indeed, it must be very complicated if you don't have a business plan or the right organization to do this. So, is it something you guys also do? You help people maybe organize the company in a way to make these different departments talk? What do you see work the best to help people facilitate this exchange of information across the company, across marketing, revenue management, and distribution, for example?
So it comes down to one word: process. There is a huge lack of process. Usually one of the underlying issues, as we're talking to someone and they're describing, the dysfunction or the issue or the dilemma, we ask, well, do you have a process for that? Or what is the process when, a guest calls and they report an issue? Are you immediately texting the maintenance person, or is it going into a technology and then it has a life cycle of a work order, right? And so the same is true with process for outbound sales campaign. That's the other lever outlier that has to have some synergy with revenue management, marketing, OTA optimization, and then your outbound calls. And we've really seen this neglected in the last 3 years, I would say. That I think it has a lot to do with Airbnb and VRBO. Let's just put those two in the ring. All of the reservations coming in on those platforms, there isn't any there's not a major lead management function. They're either booking the property, they have one question, and then book the property, right? So back in the day, I'm dating myself as well, it was, it was probably 80% outbound and reservation sales and follow-up. And if I was talking to a guest that was coming 6 months from now, the follow-up, the lead life cycle was very long. They weren't urgently trying to make a decision. So lead management is something that we do a lot of training and teaching on as well. And it's kind of a lost art. When we talk to someone and say, well, who's on your reservation team? Tell me about your team. Who does what? And there's nobody making one outbound call. They're like, should we be doing that? So I think it's just the rise of how many reservations are coming in from an OTA that they're slowly pushing out the need for, hey, let's reach out and call some of our past guests. And it's so awesome to sit back and watch those conversion rates the first day that these teams start making outbound calls, and they're amazed by it. And it's like, it's really just going back to the basics of reservation sales. And once again, these aren't cold calls. These are engaging with past guests. So they, to be able to just see how receptive that engagement is and receptive that past guest is to either say, no, we're not coming back to the destination, or yes, what do you can you help me with the search? So
I really like this because it's using your experience, right? And things that were indeed common, like follow-up and nurturing a lead and converting that, and how now it's turned into this like secret weapon that nobody knows about, who has forgotten, and that you can actually re-implement in companies. That's fantastic. I agree, because it's true. If you were born out of the instant booking world of Airbnb nowadays, it's not a culture you have, right? And you're depending on this. I need to get new bookings from new people, and thinking, how about I reach back to people who liked me and were happy, and apparently And that's especially true. I was in some destination, right? So because, for example, I got a property in a destination where people, a third of the people will come back, so it makes sense. But I've another property which I just sold in Bali, which is a bucket list destination. People go there once, most of them, right? So it does not make sense in that thing. So I guess it also comes down to your knowledge and knowledge of the PM to see what's possible here in terms of reaching back to the list of your users. And it's pure marketing, right? And segmenting and understanding things, which is something that always makes me happy as a marketer to hear.
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead. Is there anything else you think we need to share for listeners or people watching this who, again, want to understand a bit better how to increase revenue? Any like last piece of advice, best practice? Yeah.
So we like to say that every part of your operation should be profitable, right? And what are some obstacles that might limit that production? And I guess and this is kind of going to sound like a brand new topic, which it is, could be a fun entire conversation, but your owner relations and what you are establishing from day one and the ongoing expectations. Our revenue managers really struggle with the portions of the portfolios that they work with that have owners that are dictating their minimums, that are dictating their length of stay, and having to interrupt, the engineer mindset. When you are in the data, you need to not be disturbed, right? And you need to be able to just continue to like pull levers and see the data and run with it in real time. And so the disruptor that we see are the owners that are truly limiting their own revenue, that we have to stop and say, oh, can I adjust here? Can I raise this rate? Can I, change the length of stay? Here's what the data is showing. And so if we were to add up all of that disruptor time and the revenue loss for their own property, the frustration starts to mount of, if we could just, the portfolios that we do see are the easiest to manage, but also have the biggest success from the revenue lift, are the ones that allow us to look at the data and just run with it and not have these like, oh, by the way, permission that we have to interrupt that. So your owner relations matters, I guess, that's the last item I would add, that kind of is like, oh yes, okay, we'll communicate with our owners. But no, if you have a really dynamic, consistent, great owner campaign, that is what we're now also seeing is affecting your revenue.
I like this. And we have, PriceLabs now, we have like this tool that turns basically like a graph, data-heavy graph full of trends into a simple, with AI, a simple like summary of the market trends that people can just copy, paste, and send to the owners. It's very difficult one to tell them, okay, that's how your listing is doing in this market. So they can understand a bit more how the market is doing with data. And sometimes we see it work and sometimes not. And sometimes I hear PMs say, we have to fire some owners. I don't know, it's a bit harsh to say, but it's to your point, right? Some point it's not working, costing time. We tried with data to educate at some point. It's not always an easy choice, I'm guessing. But
yeah, we like to call that pruning. And we all know what happens with a fruit tree when you prune it. So
I'm gonna steal you the pruning thing. I think it's a more professional way to go about it. Sharon, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to contact you, what's the best way to reach you?
Just go to visit our website at vrmadvocate.com.
Perfect. Thank you again for your time and for your great advice.
You're welcome. Thanks for the conversation. Bye.